We're picking up at 12-0 liftoff rendezvous and docking. And again, where things went nominal, as per the checklist, we're going to get the lunar surface checklist, Jay.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to say so. LEM power up and launch prep went well. We did not do the P-22, and everything else just went as advertised on the LEM. She came up and powered up beautifully. Anything in there that's worth going over? Okay, the liftoff was went normal. We got obviously all our pyros, and we lost no changeover Parker valves or anything. The only thing that I would like to mention, let the LMP pick it up here, is that very soon after liftoff, we had apparent loss of comm, a lot of noise in the S-band. It turned out that we were downlinking, but there was something wrong with the uplink. So the CDR watched most of the guidance and could call out in the blind altitudes and goes and what have you as we pitched over and pressed on up. But for about the first 2 or 3 minutes, I think the lunar module pilot had to concern himself with trying to get comm back.
Yeah, and again, it was apparently Goddard, or Goldstone, dropped the uplink, and then when they were getting it back, I was switching on these, and for a while there, it was just completely out of phase. And but they apparently had a continuous downlink.
It was a very inopportune time, I might say, because it happened just right after ignition.
I think that's something, though, that the INCOs are going to be able to clarify, because we certainly can't give you the details. It just there was essentially no comm on all the antennas.
We got into they briefed us on a trajectory. We flew into a trajectory that appeared to be nominal. The AG showed us slide out of plane, I believe, and as a result, our tweak had 9 foot per second. It was -4, -9, and +1. We burned out X, Z, Y in that order, and it looked like the AG's out of plane indication was good.
About 7 feet per second, a little over 7 feet.
And it looked like we might have had a somewhat a G-sensitive drift in our Y accelerometer and the pings, but the tweak, as it turned out, was an excellent tweak because our rendezvous resulted in just as nominal a rendezvous and a nominal trajectory and profile as I guess I've ever been involved with. The drift in the accelerometer did not bother us anywhere else in the tracking or in the rendezvous at all. Rendezvous navigation was followed a checklist. We got radar performed very well. We had auto updates into the AGs. The only thing I might mention here is when it came to making a TPI burn, the residuals in the TPI burn were greater than what I had expected them, and we did not record them because I wanted to get them nulled out just as soon as possible. But they were, and I don't know the tenths, but they were -7 in X, and then they were 4 and 4, and I'm not sure whether they were plus or minus in Y and Z. But they were. The point I'm making is they were larger than I had expected. They were -7 and a 4 point something and a 4 point something. We reduced those to less than 0.2 of a foot per second, and from there on continued to plot right through the mid-courses, right up the pike on a nominal trajectory. Communications after that first lash up, you got any comment about that?
No, the comment was good. A couple comments about the AGs. After about 5 or 10 minutes, early in insertion, I always check the accelerometers or the after insertion. And except about 5 or 10 minutes later, and I can't remember exactly, I looked and I had accumulated a foot or two per foot, maybe a foot and a half per feet per second at X. So Gene went free and I did a gyro cal, and after that there was no significant accumulation in X. That went very well. I did that without talking to the ground, but I felt I had an understanding with him that that was something that we could do without
Okay, the
fear. Let me just also mention on the TPI solutions, the AGS had essentially, within a 2 or 3 feet per second, a good TPI solution after 6 marks. The insertion solution was not very good. It was off by a number of feet per second in X and even more in Z. This was your first one, 17 marks, and this was your final.
didn't change much.
No.
The Pings
Pings-
recycle and Pings final were
Very close, within a couple feet per second in all X. In X, they were right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
and a Pings recycle had, I don't remember exactly the cause for 15 marks. I think
You had
I had 17 marks.
17. And there's more data in the data card book about various ag, at certain times, marks with the ag solutions.
Okay, the mid-course solutions, first mid-course agreed effectively all systems except ags out of plane was a little bit high, and the decision was made to burn the onboard ping solution out of the LEM, which was minus 1.2, plus 0.4, and plus 0.3. We continued to track right up the pike. Mid-course 2 came up, and we again compared all the solutions. The ags out of plane was still a little bit high, and in actually the opposite direction from the pings. We had a slight variation in the CSM solution in Z. I don't know why. It came up with plus 5.4 feet per second in Z. So we really didn't get a very good correlation between the CSM and the LEM on the second mid-course. But the pings was still performing, the radar was still performing, and based upon our trajectory plot and based upon our following the nominal inertial line of sight rates, we decided to burn the pings, onboard ping solution in the LEM, and it was minus 0.4, minus 0.7, and minus 1.6, and from there on out we just continued to follow the inertial line of sight angles, and very little tweaking in either in Y or Z, and we just sort of floated right through the braking gates at 1 mile. I think we took about 6 or 7 feet per second off to hit 30. We met all the gates as prescribed, and just came moving very slowly into final station keeping. Went into a formation flight around the CSM, got a good inspection of the spacecraft in the sim bay, the report of which is in a transcript. Everything looked good to us. We eventually maneuvered, the command module maneuvered to the docking attitude. The LEM just took his position, his docking attitude, did his pitch and yaw maneuver, and or gave station keeping control to the command module to pitch and yaw maneuver, and stood by for docking.
Okay, this command module pilot proceeding on with the docking. I think one of the more noticeable differences between this docking and the docking with the S4B is the fact that the ascent stage deadbands a lot more than the S4B did. S4B is steady as a rock, but you could tell we just watched the LEM deadband because it would change attitude, and then you'd try to follow it. And looking on the first attempt coming in, I must have had less than 1/10 of a foot per second, just barely closing on the thing, just taking it nice and easy. Made contact and did not get captured. Okay, as soon as it didn't get captured, when it's obviously you're closing too slow, backed off, a couple of 3 feet, I guess, something like that, renewed the rates, and initiated the closing rate, and got captured. As soon as we got to capture, both vehicles went to CMC free, and you look around and check the barber poles and whatever, and look back out, and here I had some rates in the CSM, and I'm sure now that the LAM had rates also. You must have had. Right.
Well, we did when as soon as you went free. See, as soon as capture, the LEM went free,
Yeah.
and then the CSM trying to null the rates ended up perturbating the LEM and giving us rates.
Mm-hmm. So we finally gave up on that mode, had the LAM go to attitude hold. And then once you go to attitude hold, then the CSM could null the rates. And we got lined up and attempted the hard docking, no problem. Probe retract came back. This time it didn't sound like it was as much of a ripple fire. It was more of a, and it was a quicker docking, or a quicker hard dock than it was the previous time.
You got any more tape? Okay.
Yeah, we're still on.
Okay, I want to say something about visual sightings during a rendezvous. I was able to, from the LEM, I was able to see the command module when it was sunlit at somewhere around 100 miles, and definitely define that was a command module. After the command module went into darkness, I could not pick up his tracking light until we were well within about 40 miles. I think this transcript have got more an accurate time, but could not pick up the docking light, the rendezvous light, rather from the command module until we were well within 40 miles, and then just a initially very dim, faint flash. I was able to verify on board that the LEM tracking light was working, and I finally figured out how. It was reflecting off the underside of the EVA handrail on the left forward side of the LEM. So I could see the LEM tracking light flashing. And also, when there were some particles we took with us that stayed with the spacecraft, and you could see the sequential flash off of those particles as a result of our LEM tracking light.
Okay, this is the command module pilot. I've already mentioned in section 11.0 about the visibility of the lunar module through the optics.
I got down here. Let's see.
Anything else to add about rendezvous?
Photography and television, the photography on the LEM, we'll just have to wait and see how it turned out. I took a lot of footage. In fact, as we put it on not only the Ascent mag, but we put it on another mag. We had part of the mag drill. So, and that includes the Simbay. Right along, we did have a Hasselblad on board, so we have a lot of Hasselblad photography, the rendezvous, and some lunar surface stuff in the process of it.
Okay, post-docking check, we're going to 13.0, lunar module jettison through TEI. Post-docking check and pressurization. Well, first of all, I guess you said you had every latch made this time, right?
Every latch worked on all 12 docking latches worked.
Okay.
That sounds like there's something to do with the mass of the other vehicle involved here.
The general comment I want to make about the post-docking operations is that throughout the rendezvous, both pilots in the LEM kept their helmets on for dust, keep the dust out primarily. The commander took off his gloves almost immediately after insertion and flew the entire rendezvous that way. You took yours off sometime later, didn't you?
I kept mine on after we'd done a lot of transfer. I can't remember exactly.
Kept your gloves on too? You kept your gloves?
Okay. After insertion, I did most of my pre-insertion work with the gloves on because I didn't want to take the time. I want to get that initial ag solution, and I could get that fairly rapidly with the gloves. And I didn't take the gloves off until maybe 10 or 15 minutes after insertion. But I kept the helmet on all the way through most of the transfer, just to avoid breathing the dust, because I'd had the irritation, sinus irritation on the surface.
And the commander kept the helmet on throughout the rendezvous and docking. I took my gloves off after insertion and left them off. Now, when we started getting prepared, as soon as we were hard docked, the commander took off his helmet, and as I look back at that, because of the dust debris in the LEM spacecraft, I'm sorry I did it. I could have left the helmet on, and I would have had a lot less, not troublesome, but it was just eye and mouth type of irritation. You knew you were in a very heavily infiltrated atmosphere in the LEM because of the lunar dust. Although I don't know how much lunar dust previous flights had, but I think we saved a great deal of grief by taping up, by sweeping all the dust we could find on the floor into the holes and putting our tape covers over those holes. I think that had to help a great deal because there was an awful lot of dust on the floor that we didn't see. So I had, Commander had his helmets and gloves off throughout the entire transfer. Basically, the way we handled the transfer was the way we had planned. I think the LEM pilot did most of the preparation of the gear in the LEM, and the commander stayed in the tunnel and passed things on, and the inventory was going on the command module side and on the LEM side both. We vacuumed each other's suits the best we could, and everything else that got supposedly transferred unbagged or uncovered.
This is the LMP, and in spite of the CMP's comments to the contrary, I think we got things remarkably clean, and there wasn't an awful lot of dirt in the command module coming back.
Really was.
Oh, that's true. I didn't want to leave that impression. Okay.
Contrast, he may have thought it was dirty, but,
Yeah.
I was surprised we were able to keep the level of, pardon the expression, contamination in the command module down.
That atmosphere that the commander was referring to in the LEM after he took his helmet off, I could go halfway through the tunnel and stick my head up into the command module, and it was a totally refreshed, unpolluted atmosphere up there that never did get polluted.
I think having that vacuum cleaner running in the LEM had a lot to do with keeping the flow in the other direction and filtering out the air.
Oh, I did too. We never did vacuum in the command module because it just wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary to vacuum in the command module at all.
And the suits were noticeably cleaned by the vacuum cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell you were pulling stuff off of them, although they were still dirty, and every other subsequent time we handled them, we got our hands dirty. But I think most of the tree dust was taken care of.
We effectively stayed on a transfer list. I say effectively throughout that transfer. However, some things got transferred out of order and got temporarily stowed in the command module, but we effectively used the transfer list as not as a cookbook, follow recipe type of thing, but as an inventory list. And we inventoried it several times from both ends and found out that we were satisfied we had everything transferred, and then pressed on with the LEM closeout. LEM closeout went nominal. We got back into the LEM, or into the command module, and the commander closed out the LMP closed out the LEM, and for convenience, the commander effectively went back and closed out the LEM hatch, put in a command module hatch. Because of the slow tunnel vent, or the long duration of tunnel vent, the commander stayed in the tunnel, the LMP in his seat and the CMP in the left seat. We suited up and got prepared for our integrity check, and as soon as the LEM tunnel vent was complete and we were satisfied with the integrity of the hatch, we went into the suit integrity checks.
Yeah, this is CMP. Let me make another comment on the tunnel vent time. I'll bet it must take, and I'm not sure this is correct, but I bet at least 3 or 4 times longer than the simulator is for the tunnel vent move.
And I think that's going to be applicable to Skylab because of their docking. They're going to have to vent before the end dock. It took quite a while. But tunnel closeout was easy. We had no drogue and no probe, which were stowed in the LEM for LEM jet. Going through the rest of these mine triggers under lunar modules and through TEI, we just followed the checklist, and it all seemed to happen just as advertised.
Well, we got a little bit intrigued with the LEM jettison. You know, this time it was great, and it just sailed out there nice and pretty, and we got a lot of good pictures of it where we should have been maneuvering, and we ended up getting into P41 for the set burn a little bit late, but that's no problem either because we just turned the residuals in P41 and got a good set burn.
I want to make a comment that I think cleaning control in a command module was excellent, considering all the dust and all the dirt that just seemed to adhere to everything in the LEM. When we got back in a command module, with the exception of the suits and with the exception of the LMP and the CDR, everything was clean. And that, for the most part, is because everything was bagged before we brought it over, bagged and zipped. And we never did open anything once we got it zipped up. So the command module stayed, and I think that suit fan filter is probably going to be very, very clean, stay exceptionally clean throughout the remainder of the flight.
Let me add in the bagging, the decontamination bags, I made a special effort as per request pre-launch to pull those zippers as tight as I could, and they should be pretty tight sealed.
Okay, orbital navigation, high gain, why don't you pick that up?
Okay, I've already, from set to TEI, I have no comments. High gain always worked good. Omnis and S-band were good. Photography went as advertised. We have a lot of targets of opportunity. SimBay operations have been mentioned before.
Let me just make one gross comment about the way we handle it as a three-man crew at SimBay operations, which after...
Didn't we get that yesterday?
Did we?
Yeah,
Okay, it's covered.
I think it's covered.
I think I did say something.
Yeah, you did. Okay, the TEI updates, nominal. Selection of star checks were good for TEI.
Got the commander's master allowance, every one of them, all through the flight, which made me feel very
Yeah,
good.
but you kept trying to get it.
I made sure
Yeah,
I got
made sure you got
it. I made sure I got it on those last few. I wasn't going to change any mode of operation. I'll tell you that last one. Well, reentry was the last one, but I made sure I got it on TEI. Just make you guys feel at home. I figured you'd think I didn't do it right if I didn't get the master allowance.
The TEI half G, or whatever we were pulling there, seemed like more than that.
Quite noticeable.
Yeah, it sure did. It seemed like it was really pushing you back in the seat.
Yeah. Ron and I both, I think, started out holding our heads up and eventually relaxed them back on the couch.
I guess we must have had the spacecraft pretty well stowed or tied down, because as I briefed the CFP and LMP, and as I recall those kind of burns back on Apollo 10, lots of things start moving through the spacecraft and find their due on the aft end of the spacecraft because of the G-load. And much to my surprise, all we had was initial thud as we moved away from the station, and we didn't have any gear coming from anywhere flying through the spacecraft. So we must have cleaned it up pretty well.
I caught a white tagged wet wipe.
A white tag wet wipe. But other than maybe one or two of those things, in looking back, I would have expected more gear to come from somewhere, but we prepared for those burns pretty well.
Well, that brings up another point that reminds me, though, is that there has always water condensing on the ECU unit, the pipes and what have you back in there when you get back to clean the suit circuit return valve. And when we put our suits on for the EVA the next day, your suits were noticeably wet. And also, when I pulled the PGA bag up, it was damp down underneath the PGA bag. So I think as a normal procedure, we should have, either after the burn, probably before the burn, made sure we wipe up the water in the LAB somehow to do that.
I wasn't really aware. Our suits were damp when we put them out, but I was not aware. I could look down there, and I could not find any real water down in the down there. Except
just
on
damp.
ECS.
Yeah, on ECS, there's always water down there in ECS, and I just assumed that's where all that came from. But
Funny, it was all over.
it's not a puddle of water. Like you say, it was just damp.
It was almost as if it was colder down in the LOB and water was condensing on all over the suit. It wasn't as if they were in a puddle.
Yeah. Okay, I think that covers right on through TEI.
Let's see. Yeah, the one thing I want to mention on TEI is that, again, the simulator is set up such that in the roll deadband that goes over to one side of the roll deadband just kind of stays there. And during the TEI burn, it was bouncing back and forth from one side of the deadband, clear over to the other side of the deadband. And when it's bouncing back and forth, the roll rate is up around 4/10 of a degree per second, arcing back and forth across the roll deadband.
Okay, 14.0 Trans-Earth Coast, and the thing that I just realized we've neglected to say anywhere about systems, I'd like to mention chlorination at this point in time. I think without fail, did you ever talk about it?
No,
I think without fail, almost every chlorination leaked. Sometimes larger quantities of water, other times just small quantities of water. And I'll tell you where it leaked.
Water or chlorine?
Well,
Or both?
it's a combination.
chlorine in your chlorinating and buffer or water when you withdrew the buffer sample. But where it leaked appeared to me to leak within the ampule itself around the bag, because it was the chlorine, the cylindrical chlorine dispenser that was continually wet. It was not where the dispenser fit into the needle, or where the needle adapter fit into the spacecraft. It was within the barrel chlorine dispenser itself, and we continually, chlorination was a case of always cleaning your hands with chlorine, because you always had it available down there within that dispenser, and in some cases you had larger quantities of water that had to be wiped up with a tissue. That plagued us throughout the whole mission. It turned out not to be a serious problem because we learned how to handle it, but that was one system anomaly that never had really been brought out.
Okay, let's see, CMP, let me amplify that a little bit. In 2 cases, I'm almost positive that when you put the thing on in the bayonet fitting and crank it on there, it did not puncture the ampule itself. And the reason I believe that's correct is that when you start to crank the outside of the cassette down to push the chlorine into the water system, it was very hard to turn. And if you tried to force it, you could force it on down there, and I'm sure that's a good way to break an ampule on the thing. And if you take it, I just, in 2 cases, took the bayonet fitting loose again and put it back on there, and in both cases, then you try to squeeze the chlorine out of the ampule into the system, and it would turn easier. But it's still hard
Awfully hard to crank
that thing down.
But we did not, we got the chlorination done. We didn't miss any injections of chlorine, and we didn't miss any of the buffer samples. So I guess we got the job done. It was just a little bit messy. And chlorine was evident, and because the CDR eventually peeled all the outer skin off his right hand, and I'm convinced it was due to the chlorine and had nothing to do with the EVA.
Boy, he lost a little flesh, little skin on
Trans-Earth Coast, systems, navigation. Let's press on and see what we can say about that.
Do you want to have lunch today?
Okay, well, let me see how much Trans-Earth Coast we got to do. Let's go through up to the CSM EVA anyway.
Okay.
Okay, Trans-Earth Coast, the first thing I want to mention is passive thermal control was at what I would call unusual latitudes because of the UV and IR requirements. Now, these unusual latitudes did two things. They put us, they required us to remaneuver the spacecraft several times and enter and exit PTC several times, which in itself was not a problem. It was just additional coordination. Coincidentally, most of these particular PTC attitudes were within 30, certainly 45 degrees of gimbal lock most of the time. So we were looking at the red apple good portion of the trip home. But they also, some of those attitudes where you actually were not in, we were in attitudes and or PTC at these relatively unusual positions, change the equilibrium heat load on the spacecraft. You could see it in RCS, quad temperatures were all right, but you could see it in helium package temperatures. And most notably, you could see it on the change in condensation from the tunnel hatch to the forward hatch. The tunnel hatch eventually, for most of the way home, ended up to be very dry. And about the second day out on the way home, the center hatch got soaking wet to the point that I even took a dry rag and wiped off some of the latch components and some of the gearbox components externally. Not that it did any good, but there was just that much water on it. I think this is all due to the PTC attitudes required for the Simba experiments on the way home.
It was colder in the spacecraft, too.
Oh, yes, it was colder in the spacecraft.
Not as cold as the commander thought it was. But
That's
it was
right.
colder.
Cold enough to warm up.
On the commander's orders. And I just mentioned we warmed it up with the ground suggestion of an extra inverter and going to manual on the temp in. I think we discussed that yesterday.
Ron, all your rough snap changes, your torquing, platform torquings, all those went very well, I thought.
They went great, really well.
And all the way back home, it was just changing attitudes, with the exception of the EVA day, which we'll cover here shortly.
CSM EVA.
Okay, on EVA prep, I think the only anomaly we came across was the CMP's, well, let's see, on EVA prep, we really didn't have any. We didn't know anything at that point. On the, I was going to say on the CMP's com carrier. But the EVA prep went right down the line, essentially. It was all well laid out within the experiments checklist, and we checked things off as we went, and stayed pretty much on the timeline. We started about a half hour early and stayed a half hour early.
We started. We were half hour early throughout the whole thing, and we lost that half hour and opened the hatch just about and turned TV on exactly on time. And I can't remember a small little something that chasing down. Com carrier change. We lost that half hour during a com carrier change on a tone. Ron, I'd like to add that post EVA, that I think one thing that helped us immensely on what ended up to be, I think, a very fine entry stowage was that we sort of backed off after the EVA and took a good long list at the long-range stowage as well as the post-EVA stowage, and really effectively started housekeeping, cleaning up the cabin, and effectively stowing some of the articles that were not going to be used any further in the mission for entry at that time.
At that point in time, yes, we
So our
did.
entry stowage really started with the post-EVA time frame period, and I think that really helped us out in the long run.
Okay, I think we should mention how we got out of the suits on this thing. To me, that was a pretty important way to get things done. And
The only change to the prep and/or post was the order in which we doffed and donned suits, because it was very evident that there were certain convenient ways, because of the way the student suits were stowed and the way people fit into the checklist, that when we donned the suits, the commander got donned
You got him
first.
and I did, and
Then the LMP and the CMP got down last, and it worked out very fine that way. Plus, the CMP had less work to do in his suit, which also aided him in the long run. When we doffed,
I went first.
the LMP
Yeah, because I was definitely.
went first,
LP, then you.
then the CDR, and then the CMP. And that wasn't exactly the way it was called for, but that's the way it worked out.
that's the way it worked out the best.
And we stowed our suits in the L-shaped bag prior to putting the center couch back in, which was another good decision, I believe, in helping us get the suit stowed back in that L-shaped bag.
Go ahead.
Okay, let's go on down cabin depress. No problems. The normal depress. Hatch opening. Even though the hatch was completely, or the cabin was completely depressed, I think we're reading zero pressure on the thing. As soon as I opened the hatch, there was enough residual pressure or something inside the spacecraft that it actually tended to pull the hatch out
Because your
of my hand.
suit is bleeding into the cabin all the time, so you never truly get zero.
That's right, you never truly get zero on the thing, but the dump valve was still open. And if I had not been hanging onto the hatch, it would have blown it all the way open.
Well, Ron, to give you an idea, that's not unexpected, because it's exactly what we had on the lunar surface. We completely dump the lamp, and I'd still have to break that hatch loose and hold it open about 6 or 8 inches until things just vented, and then I could leave go of the hatch and open it all the way. If I didn't, it would slam back closed.
So we had an inward.
Oh, yeah. Different type of.
So it was basically the same thing. You got to open it and really let things get down to zero.
Okay, well, when I opened the hatch, then all of the, excuse me, all the little ice crystals and everything started flowing out. A pin went floating by, and something else went floating by. Wasn't quite sure what it was. But there's all kinds of little particles and pieces start coming out through the hatch.
But I sure didn't see, I looked specifically for the scissors. I didn't see any scissors go out that hatch, I hate to say.
None of them went by my watch.
None of them went by me. Ron, I'd like to say that they went out the hatch, but I sure didn't see them go. Sure you didn't see them go by?
I caught the one thing and started to go by me, and we put it in your pocket.
You got it.
Push straight.
Okay, once all the particles and junk was out of the way, then you just push the hatch open. We had disconnected the counterbalance with the beat to tool B there, so that we locked the hatch in the open position. So I just shoved it open, and it went beyond the center position and locked in the open position with no problem. Egress, I had a tendency, I guess, just like any other thing, it seems like you want to float up. And I had a tendency to float up against the MDC and had to consciously duck and get as close, my face as close as I could to the bottom of the hatch in order to get past get the OPS past the MDC and get on out. TV and DAC installation worked fine. I could hang on with the right hand on the hatch, the great big D handle on the hatch, and with the TV pole in my left hand, and it worked out real fine. Just stick it in there and then line it up with the mark and make sure it was locked in or clamped in. And then climbed on up the pole to turn the TV on, or turn the DAC on. And it was, you couldn't see the light. I couldn't see the light on the thing, but you could feel the camera running once you turn it on. You could just touch it and you could feel it vibrating a little bit. The lunar sounder cassette retrieval, I think that should be on the onboard, or on the air-to-ground tapes. As I was describing most everything that was going on, there's no problem. The pan camera cassettes were next. No problem on the pan camera cassettes. In the pan camera, it's obviously a bigger mass, and it's quite apparent when you try to move that big mass around that it is heavier and it weighs more than the other things. It's easy to move, but it just takes a little more effort to get it started. And you know that if you ever get it started in one direction, it's going to keep on going. You have to stop it. So I just moved everything real slow, tried to keep it under control. Mapping camera cassette had the same problem I had in the Simbay C²S², getting the thermal cover off. It's stuck underneath the mapping camera laser altimeter door. But there was no real problem. I had the feet in the shoes, just give it a big jerk, and it finally came off. Simbay inspection, that's all covered in the onboard, the air-to-ground tapes. TV and DAC removal, again, was real simple. Just had to squeeze the lever, and TV came out, and it was easy to hang on with one hand and maneuver the TV around and point it toward the moon, because I didn't have to worry about shining it into the sun. When I tried to, again, hang on with one hand and point the TV around toward the Earth, the Earth was, well, maybe 10 or 15 degrees, probably 15 degrees from the sun. And I tried to be a little more accurate on the thing, and when I did that, then I lost, kind of effectively really lost control of my body position, because I was trying to I think, maneuver the camera. And you need both hands to maintain your body control again. So rather than try to flash the camera through the sun or something like that, I gave up on trying to point the camera out the Earth. Comm during EVA was loud and clear for me throughout the EVA. There was a lot of background noise, the hissing of the airflow, and I'm sure that was probably coming over the box circuit. But
I don't think anyone didn't appear to me that anyone had any trouble on the ground reading.
I think one of the big advantages there around the LMP, that one thing we did, because it was bothering him at first, I turned your box sensitivity down about 2 notches. And apparently that really improved the comm form, is the impression I had.
I had that impression from the ground. I don't know if it made any difference or not, but I got the impression that did help.
Comm into the cabin was excellent. I never had any trouble understanding you. I had the hissing in the background, but we...
yeah, I thought it sounded much better than I remembered other flights sounding. On the air to ground.
Well, our CMP made more noise than us.
I guess I used the wrong word there. It was clearer.
Clear. Ingress seemed to me like it was easier than the egress.
Yeah.
For some reason. Hatch closing was harder than I anticipated. And I guess maybe this is the same reason, is that I must have been exhausting into the cabin all the time. And just that the hatch would come closed to within about an inch of closing on the outer edge, and then it took an effort to pull the hatch closed so that you could activate the latching handle. that you could get the latches over center. Of course, once you got the first stroke on the latching handle and got the latches over center, then it's real easy. Just a couple more cranks on the hatch closing. Cabin repress was nominal.
Let me add my comments
Okay.
here. This is LMP. All I did was work in the hatch area, and I want to emphasize, I think what everybody has always said is that you do your best work when you take things slow and easy and just let yourself move yourself in small increments to where you want to go. And you can turn and dip and raise yourself up. And I think it's also useful for any cabin hatch or port operations to have somebody else available to push you out on your tether as far as you want to go or pull you in. It just eases the operation. Gene was doing this occasionally for me. But with the struts and everything available there was never any feeling that I didn't have a way to control my body position. Sometimes it took a few seconds to get it where I wanted it, but it was clear. The one thing, invariably, every time I went back inside, I had this 90-degree disorientation feeling for a few seconds until I got the perspective of the cabin again and said, okay, that's right. And I get back in, and then I'd go back outside, and I come back in again, and then once again it seemed as if the cabin had rotated 90 degrees to my perspective. And it's just something that's no problem. It's just a change of perspective for some reason that I experienced several times. I guess the biggest problem working in that angle for me, sun angle or attitude, was I had the sun full face.
You had the sun in your eyes most of the time.
And so it made it hard to look in detail and see what you were doing. You were clear image, you were there, and I could see every major operation do it, but if I had to specifically see details, it was...
Oh, I know. One point I wanted to make also was that I had no awareness whatsoever that I had an umbilical on my back. I never got the feeling that the umbilical was tugging on me, restricting my movements, or anything. I didn't even know it was there. And did you observe at any time, did the umbilical ever get tangled around my feet?
The umbilical was easy to tend, and I frankly don't remember a single time when I had to clear it. There may have been one. I have a vague impression that one time I asked you to hold up, or maybe I didn't say anything. I just moved it away from a handhold or something. But the umbilical was very didn't tend to snake around, and it was you seemed to have everything you needed on it.
It worked out real
Not a problem at
good.
all.
I didn't even know it was there. I guess that's the point I was making. Is that really being tied to the umbilical does not restrict your movement or give you a feeling that it is restricting your movement at all. Suit doffing and storage, I think we've already discussed that. This is continuing on the EVA part of it, but no, this is a different section here, suit doffing and storage. We've already mentioned the suit doffing and storage. The light flash phenomena, three of us were blindfolded for an hour and never saw a light flash.
That was the second round.
The second round,
back to
on the way back, and Trans-Earth. Eating, resting, exercise, and comfort.
Let me add to the light flashes, LMP, that the next, that evening, I guess it was, I did see them again, falling asleep. So
I did too.
So there was just that period, apparently, during the actual experiment that for some reason they weren't visible.
I think we've discussed the eating, resting,
Yeah.
exercise, and comfort already. Cabin atmosphere. The one thing that I don't think we've ever mentioned yet, and I think should be noted, is that we never really utilized the waste storage vent to get rid of any odors out of that waste storage compartment. And if you kind of drifted over in that area, it was always apparent you were in that area. If you got real close to it, I thought it
I
was.
never noticed
I never noticed.
it. I think
I
generally.
guess maybe I did when you opened the door, that's when you really noticed it.
The cabin generally turned over the atmosphere in pretty good style. It got saturated sometimes with gas, and it took a few minutes. But once the source of that gas was plugged up, the cabin did a good job of recirculating and cleaning out the.
I think it did,
I think
real good.
Flight plan updates were super. The flight plan was excellent, and they were held to a minimum, and we really didn't change any part of the entire flight except a few dates and times and what have you here and there. Attitudes. But other than that, it was really at a minimum. Let's say the entry preparations really began after EVA and continued all through the next day. And we had very little final stowage to do on entry morning. Just those things that we had to leave unstowed until we got out of our sleep restraints. So we basically just had to tie the big bags down on A1 and 2 and 7 and 8. And final entry preparations went by the checklist. And if anything, we stayed about 5 minutes ahead throughout the entire checklist, including separation and activation of the command module RCS, and picked that 5 minutes up, of course, right at 05G, which came on time. The communications, I thought, were very good through that period of time. We were through Araya the last couple minutes prior to RRT, and I understand now the ground heard everything we said right on through blackout, into blackout. And then and as soon as we came out of blackout, they still had Araya, and they could read us, and we could have read them, but they never transmitted anything.
Oh, that was it, okay.
I'm running out of tape here.
No, I can't think of anything else.
Well, on the corridor check, so we got Horizon and Moonset, right?
Yeah.
Without any, with problem of looking, but.
But we had them all, and they all were within seconds of the actual time.
They were all within seconds, and in the CMS, I'd always look for the 2G when the corridor light would go out, though. I didn't even notice it in the flight. So I was either watching something else, I must have been checking the EMS or the